Welcome in to a Week 4 edition of the Monday Huddle Show, a time flies when you're having fun edition of the Monday Huddle Show. As I said, we're already through Week 4 of the high school football season, so I guess that would make this Week 5 of the Press Pros Magazine Huddle Show. I'm Bruce Hooley. There is Sonny Folks in his posh new Skynet Internet studios, and he will not be vanishing from our screens tonight because he has fast rural internet, courtesy of our friends at Skynet Internet. Tell us all about it, Sonny.
All the bandwidth in the world you need, and we are appreciative of Skynet being a new sponsor and hosting us tonight in downtown Piqua. They are purveyors, and their specialty is rural internet. You can give them a call. If you're out in the country in Miami County, give them a call at 773-937 773-0998 tomorrow. Talk with Craig Grissom, and if you're having sketchy internet issues, they can make them go away. And again, our thanks to Skynet tonight in downtown Piqua, and give them a call tomorrow, 773-0998. Ask for Craig Grissom. He'll answer the phone. You don't even have to ask for it.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, we're happy to be with you. We're happy to have you with us on the Press Pros social channels, as after this week, we will be at the midway point of the regular season and the 1/3 point of the entire season, I believe. 5 weeks in the playoffs, Mr. Folks, or did they add another layer?
Yes, sir, maybe 6. I don't know.
All right, so I think it's 5 because last week our state champions were 15-0. So we have some unbeaten teams still in Central Ohio. We have New Albany. The Eagles were ranked in the top 10 in Division I last week. And boy, over in our Press Pros original coverage area, we have a battle of unbeatens this week in the MAC. New Bremen going to Marion Local. New Bremen surprised some people, including the extraordinary picks page picker, Sonny Folks, by defeating previously undefeated Versailles. So New Bremen is 4-0, Marion Local is 4-0, Marion Local on top of Division 6. And I would imagine that New Bremen will get some serious respect in the poll voting this week, Sonny, after knocking off defending Division 5, now Division 6, Versailles.
They deserve it. They deserve it. I had them losing by a score. They won it by a score. And a couple things that really impressed me. We talk so much about David Holman and what he brings to that football team as a senior leader, quarterback, free safety, plays center field on defense in the back end of their defense. And they did a superb job, held Versailles, which is a very capable running team. They held them to just 201 yards of total offense and just 40 yards passing. That they had shown me 2 weeks earlier against Fort Loramie their ability to stretch the field and throw it a little bit. And Holman and company took all of that away, made them run the ball, expend a lot of time off the clock, use the clock, of course, to help beat them. And very impressive 14-7 win. Those wins sometime are more impressive than 42-7, if you know what I mean, because you got to play, that one mistake and somebody goes the length of the field, ties the game, goes for the 2-point conversion, gets it, and you get beat. That can happen easily, and they didn't allow that to happen. So whatever respect they get this week, they deserve, because they were very impressive. And I've heard a little bit about them this week, and the fact that we picked the wrong team.
Yeah, we'll get to some of those picks during our Reader Speaks segment. We will talk with Mark Znider, who's our Ohio State football beat writer. Buckeyes all over Arkansas State on Saturday. They have Toledo coming up on Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I know you can't wait for that game to start. Well, you'll have to wait all day for Ohio State to maul Toledo by about 70 points. And they have another night game on the schedule coming up this month. We'll have that announcement for you a little bit later on in the show. But while you're talking about David Holman, Mr. Folks, you mentioned his prowess at quarterback. You mentioned his prowess at the safety position. Am I incorrect that Mr. Holman is also a very consequential player on New Bremen's special teams? Did he not have the key blocked punt against Marion Local 2 years ago in the playoffs that was a springboard for New Bremen? I thought he did.
His older brother, Dan, did.
Well, he had the right family, but the wrong player.
He had the right family, but this was older brother, Dan, who blocked the punt and then picked it up and ran it in for a touchdown that put them ahead and sealed the win for them. But now what David did do as a sophomore in that game was block a 29-yard field goal that would have given Marion a two-score lead before halftime, and that was a significant turning point in the game when he blocked that field goal. So he did have a block kick, but it was in the first half, and it was a 3-pointer rather than a critical punt right in the shadow of the Marion goal line, and that was a big, or the New Bremen goal line, and that was a big turning point in the season, as it turned out, as they went on and swept through the playoffs into the Division VII title, beating Warren JFK.
Now, let's see. Marion Local is 4-0 on top of Division VI, as we said, stacked Division VI. It has Marion Local Division VII state champion a year ago, Versailles Division V state champion a year ago. It has Kirtland, multiple-time Division V state champion, and it has Cary, the actual defending 6th state champion, in it. Marion Local has given up, did you tell me, 7 points all season?
Yeah, their point differential through 4 games, they've scored 151 points against 4 opponents, and they've given up 7. And those 7 points came right before halftime in the season opening game against Division III Wapakoneta. And since then, it has been a little bit tough to score on.
Well, those Marion Local linebackers are good, but we learned a lesson last week, and that is that dominant wins and shutout wins do not guarantee you additional wins, as Piqua found that out by going to Xenia. Piqua had won each of its first 3 games by 50 points plus and had not allowed a point all season. Went into Xenia, ran into a very determined, very talented Bucks team, and Xenia came out with that victory. So Piqua will try to get back on the winning track this week at home against, I would presume, Sidney is a rival. Are they an arch rival? I know Troy a rival.
A very emotional rival. In fact, people in Miami County overlook Sidney sometimes because of Troy. The Troy-Piqua rivalry has been played 130 some odd times, and it's almost even after that many games. I think it's 66, 60, and 6 or something like that.
It's actually 66, 66, and 6 now that Piqua won this year.
Okay, well, so it's even.
Yep.
Okay, so but Sidney has been an emotional rivalry. That's north on I-75 since I was in school, way back in the 70s, back during the Dave Haynes days when he was coaching there. And they had the team that won 30 games in a row. In fact, they named the playing field at Memorial Stadium up there now, 30-0 field. So, this is a big game. There have been years in the past when people looked at that game and said, Sidney has no chance of winning this game, and they come out and won it. Pick was by no means out of the woods Friday night. They got to come to play, and they know it.
Elsewhere in the MVL on Friday night, we have what I thought would be more of a headline game than it is. Of course, when Tippecanoe is undefeated, it is always a headline game. They are ranked in Division 5 or Division 3?
Division 3.
Division 3. Tip is in the top 10. They take on Stebbins, and I looked at Stebbins last week when I was scanning the record in the MVL for the Piqua-Xenia matchup, and it looked to me like both teams would have only 2 tough games the rest of the year against Tip and against Stebbins. Well, now Stebbins got beaten handily on Friday night by Troy, which was a bit of a surprise in the fact that Troy got rolled by Piqua 59-0 the week before. So I don't know what Stebbins has. They're 2-1. They're going into Tip. Matt Burbacher doing a nice job with the Red Devils. That's another headline game on Friday night. And then in the MAC, we have Minster at Anna. We mentioned New Bremen at Marion Local. We have Versailles at Parkway. Coldwater, undefeated team, another undefeated team, another ranked team. Coldwater now in Division 5. Very highly ranked team with good reason. They're taking on St. Henry. St. Henry really struggling. You watched them lose to Anna, and they also lost to, was it Parkway this past week?
Parkway last week. Been a long time since they've lost to Parkway, and that was a 14-0 game. And their offense right now is in hiatus. Somebody commented the other day, it's not even a work in progress. They are really struggling to move the ball and get the ball in the end zone. So I'm sure Brad Luthman and his staff are having a little CTJ time this week trying to get that thing figured out and get some yards and points on the board.
Actually, the Parkway people are telling us right now that it hasn't been that long since Parkway beat St. Henry. It's only been 3 days. We meant prior to Friday night, of course.
Well, that's true.
The last game in the MAC is Delphos St. John's at Fort Recovery, and we'll get to some of our OCC games this weekend. The best games that I see: undefeated Dublin Jerome. They knocked off Kaufman last week, 16-7. Jerome is 4-0, takes its 4-0 record into Hilliard Bradley, which lost its first game on Friday night to Marysville, and then New Albany is undefeated, cruising along, as I said. They should have a breather there at Olentangy Liberty. Pick Central, which got a big win over Pick North on Friday night at home. Pick Central had lost back-to-back to Elder and Wayne, but don't rule them out. They've made it to 6 straight regional finals. They look to have righted the ship, and they'll be taking on Gahanna 3-1. Be a lot of D1 talent on that field. But with that, let's talk a little Buckeye football as the NFL season is underway. The Bengals and the Browns are underway, and the Buckeyes are 2-0, and they are number 3 in the polls. And we will get rid of our banner huddle show label there so that we can see the smiling face of Mr. Mark Znider. Hello, Mr. Znider. How are you this evening?
Good evening.
So Arkansas State, the Red Wolves, and until we saw what? Wisconsin lose to Washington State, Nebraska lose to Georgia Southern, Notre Dame lose to, was that Marshall?
Marshall.
People were not very happy with Ohio State's level of dominance against Arkansas State. I guess when you win as handily as they did and other teams lose to middling teams, maybe now the Ohio State game over Arkansas State viewed in a little bit of a different light.
I don't know how you could ever rank any college teams until like week 7 or 8. I mean, NFL, you play somebody that's respectable just about every week. You have to fight hard to win by a field goal or a point. College football, the stats, I don't know how you could compare stats between the SEC, ACC, Big Ten. I don't know. And people, if they were upset over that Arkansas State game, yeah, keep in mind this Champ Flemings, this little 5'7", 155-pound running back receiver. He caught 10 balls. Nobody else caught more than 3, and they couldn't run the ball. And Ohio State played a ton of people. They played 12 defensive linemen. I sound like a homer for Ohio State, but it was only game 2, and they've got a lot of work to do. I mean, they didn't have Smith and Jigba. And they're trying to find out, they're trying to build so much depth, I think, that they are injury proof when it comes to these big games. And I don't think there's going to be a big game until game 12.
You know, Mark, I never cease to be amazed at how much college football has changed since Woody Hayes was coach at Ohio State, and he would have 110 or 115 kids on scholarship. He'd have kids there that he had scholarship just so they wouldn't go someplace else and play against him. And how much the playing field has gotten level since the limit has been brought down to 85, and now the talent pool is spread out across the country. You got that kids like that Fleming kid at Arkansas State that is getting on the field as a freshman, playing immediately, making impact and hurting some teams, as we saw last weekend. Appalachian State, you can't take them for granted anymore. You can't take anyone for granted on a given Saturday. You know, everybody's got some good football players now that they didn't used to have.
Well, I mean, Butch Jones did supermarket sweep. I mean, he brought in 20 Power 5 transfers. He's got 40 freshmen and sophomores, and you know, they look good when they're running across the field. And I don't know how many games they're going to win. And here, Notre Dame. I mean, Bruce, you go back. You saw what Notre Dame did. How many good coaches, how many coaching hires have they blown? They had Lou Holtz.
Looks like one more.
Yeah, and Brian Kelly. They hired a high school coach and Jerry Faust. They brought in Bob Davie. They've had nothing but failures. And then they went on pure emotion thinking that Marcus Freeman, 36-year-old Marcus Freeman, with a couple of years as a coordinator was going to do a good job. And he lost to Oklahoma State in the bowl game. He choked away like a 17-point lead. And I thought their quarterback, Buckner, that little guy who's out for the season now, he looked like a backup to me. And their running backs looked like backups. Their defenses looked pretty good. But I don't know. I think they're going to blow away Wisconsin in a couple weeks because Wisconsin's going to try that power ball and Iowa can't score. And folks, the Big Ten, tell me how many offensive players do they have that could even remotely think about getting drafted? And I'm talking about skill players. There aren't any.
Yeah, I left Iowa I left Iowa off my list of upset victims, and Iowa State's a Big 12 team, and they got Matt Campbell, who's a really good coach, who, by the way, should be the coach at Notre Dame right now. You're totally right. I like Marcus Freeman a lot. Marcus was not ready for that job,
He wasn't ready.
not because of the X's and O's, but because of that's just a big, big, big job for somebody's first job. And you're right. They fell victim to emotion. They violated the Hooley rule. The Hooley rule is never hire the interim. Never hire the interim, ever. And I know people are going to say, oh, wait, Ryan Day was an interim. Okay. Dabo Swinney was an interim. Yeah, so was Larry Coker at Miami. Don't hire the interim. It's an emotion-driven decision. Bad results most commonly. And a place like Notre Dame could have found a well-established coach to go in there and change things from the Brian Kelly era. Sometimes change is good. And after Kelly had been there as long as he had, I think change was in order. And so Iowa lost. Northwestern lost to Duke. Penn State, looked okay against Kent State. But let's talk a little bit about Michigan, because you said Ohio State's only remaining game in the regular season, and I agree with you, is the Michigan game.
Yep.
Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy. Look, J.J. McCarthy looked great against Hawaii. Have they committed to J.J. McCarthy? And do you think Michigan has a legit shot at Ohio State in Ohio Stadium based on what you've seen so far, which I know is a long way from when they'll actually play?
Yeah, I mean, McCarthy got the easy of the two games. McNamara, you could tell in the opener, was pressing. He was cussing under his breath. He was just – he looked like a guy who was squeezing the bat too tight. And, McCarthy comes in with nothing to lose. And I think they opened up the quarterback competition because they didn't want to see McCarthy just go and transfer and leave him high and dry like Ohio State did last year by playing Paris Johnson at guard so he wouldn't transfer. But, you got Blake Corum, he's one of those little guys. It's hard to tackle. Donovan Edwards, who he sure as heck looks like Paris Campbell. He's just fast. They got their wideout from last year, was hurt.
Ronnie Bell. Yep. Ronnie Bell's back.
Defensively, I don't know. How good is Michigan? I have no idea. I saw bits and pieces of game one and game two. I was in the press box at Ohio State, so I saw the highlights. But, they look like the only team other than Penn State, because they got this Nick Singletary, who is a 5-star running back, and they're already comparing him to Saquon Barkley. And then there's Drew Allar from Medina, who I wouldn't be surprised if he was their quarterback down the road. They're playing a lot. Penn State is not burning up they are burning up red shirt years. And because they want to get a lot of these 4- and 5-star guys in, because if they went with their veterans, the talent's okay. 8 and 4, okay, but it looks like they're going to start breaking out the kids. So, but yeah, Michigan, you know how that game is. I mean, it'll probably be a white knuckler, But then again, we might look at Jim Knowles' defense. He played 12 down linemen on Saturday. He had 5 defensive backs play between 37 and 39 plays. Caden Curry, a true freshman, goes in there during slop time, 12 plays, he had 4 tackles. And the kid is just an absolute demon. So, a lot of things are going to play out, including health. If CJ Stroud goes down, all bets are off.
Yeah.
So, but I'm thinking that the Big Ten is really weak. Their teams can't score. And it's probably going to come down to, you're going to be at, Penn State, and you just got to make sure you don't walk in and lose yourself and find yourself in a tight game at the end and you lose on a jump ball or something.
But you say, you talking about C.J. Stroud, you say if he goes down, all bets are off. But yet, how many other Big Ten teams have a 5-star backup or a 4-star backup like McCord?
But he hasn't done it. He hasn't done anything.
Waiting in a way. That's true, but he has played. He can play. He's talented, and he's got enough talent around him. To your point about Saturday, I'm amazed, and as you said about how many people they played, I'm amazed at the number of people today who said to me, or a couple people have written in, people on radio, on ESPN today just talked about how lackluster Ohio State looked in shellacking that team from Arkansas State. And as you said, people have no idea about 12 linemen playing and all these people getting on the field just for the sake of, as you say, depth, and to make sure if the unforeseen happens, they've got their butt cleared and covered with a viable replacement.
The people who were whining were the ones who gave the points. And if you're dumb enough to give 43.5 points, you deserve to lose your money.
Well, I would
it's not, it's a beauty contest in college football until you really get to the meat. It's a beauty contest. And I think Day and Knowles and all those coaches are trying to find out what they've got. They're trying to build offensive line.
I agree.
Their offensive line is not like last year where they could just plug and play. It's not. They don't have much proven beyond that, their starters.
I'm just talking about a lot of people whining about how lackluster they were, that had nothing on the game, wouldn't bet $5 to save their life. But the expectation is so high because that's all we talk about is how talented they are, and they're going to score 70 points every week out. And if they don't score 70, I got some family members myself that get up and turn off the set because they can't stand the tension. So, these are people who are complaining that really don't know the backstory of Ohio State football at this point.
Yeah, and the thing, if I were really lived and died with this team, I would be upset if I saw DeJuan Jones false start 3 times in the opener.
Yeah, I agree.
When that was a problem last year, and I would be freaking out if I saw 9 flags in a retaliation, blocking the back. Stupid thing. Who hurdles anymore when you're trying to block a kick? They did. I mean, that's the kind of stuff why I thought they were going to get beat last year at Michigan. And if this stuff keeps happening like it did last year in games 7, 8, and 9, you're going to be in trouble. Because I'm a firm believer if you're going to die with those mistakes if you keep repeating them.
I've always felt like the difficulty for Ohio State is the lack of decent opposition in the Big Ten, because you can point out mistakes on film and coach it in practice. But until you suffer a consequence for taking a wrong step on a block or taking a bad angle on defense, until you suffer a consequence for that, it's very hard to get that button down for a playoff game against an Alabama or a Georgia. Yeah. And it's the old John Cooper bromide. It never catches up to you until it catches up to you. And by the time it catches up to you, it's too late to do anything about it. Now, let me say this about Ohio State's depth and the number of guys they play. It is, to me, a double-edged sword that they tout their recruits and people hang on every single recruit and how many stars he has when they sign them. And that to me is like the expectation. They create the expectations, the outlandish, unreasonable, unrelenting expectations. They create a lot of those themselves by hyping every kid as the next greatest thing, better than anybody they had before, even if the guy they had before was a 3-time All-American. Is it true or not true, Mark, that every kid on scholarship at Ohio State would be the highest ranked recruit on the Arkansas State sideline if he signed with Arkansas State?
Well, yeah, and then you could just throw in all the group of 5 conferences, and you could probably throw in the ACC, and you could probably throw in most of the Pac-12. These are must-have people, and but I don't think it's Ohio State building it up. You know who they are out there. Those websites that, you get a 16-year-old kid who says Ohio State's one of my 31 finalists. They're going to do a story about that kid. And to me, with my theory as a writer, I don't care how many stars you have until you actually do it in the big time. Until you actually do it, I don't care. You're just another kid. And you remember who was the kid from St. Ignatius that they just had to have about 25, 30 years ago, and he wound up being a big nothing. And Troy Smith, who was the kid Pickens from Massillon?
Joe Pickens, Justin Zwick.
Yeah, those guys were big, slow white guys who actually wound up like pitchers when they threw the ball. And So until you actually do it on the field, I'm not interested. But what the important thing to know is, does Jim Knowles, Josh Proctor whiffed. They blitzed Denzel Burke on the first play against Notre Dame. Darn near got a batted ball. Proctor goes for the knees, whiffs 54 yards. He only plays 4 more plays. Burke got charbroiled by this little Flemings guy for jet sweeps, and he got 2 PI flags, and he got yanked. And they brought him back for the start of the second half, but J.K. Johnson got about close to 40 snaps. Maybe had more than that. But I think you're going to see more of that.
Well,
have you seen much of Tyleik Williams? I haven't.
No. You made a point about it's nothing until you do it on the field to show you can do it. I take it one step farther. I'm not impressed when you do it against Toledo. I am Toledo and Arkansas State and Youngstown State to death. What a waste of a state. Bruce made a great point to me this morning. We were talking on the way to work this morning on the phone. He says, how can you go to Arkansas and not bring Arkansas here and you bring Arkansas State instead of Arkansas?
I said, why Cincinnati playing Arkansas and Ohio State's playing Arkansas
What's wrong with that?
Well, but look, we all know what the SEC does on week 11. I mean, they're playing Furman and Georgia Baptist. I don't even know if there's a Georgia Baptist. You need those kind of games.
Baptist in Georgia.
Yeah, but until you get to a 12-team playoff, you're going to see more of that. When you get to 12 teams, you could lose. You're going to see a lot of 2-loss teams anymore, and there won't be any griping about from the 13th or 14th teams because nobody's going to pay attention to them. It's going to be a whole different world when we get to that point, and that's when you're going to see a lot of the money games during the season. That's when you're going to see teams loosen up. But when we were growing up, you saw the same thing. I mean, you didn't see too many. Notre Dame SC was the big game, but a lot of the other big games were regional games. Ohio State. No,
you go back and check Ohio State's non-league schedule in the 70s and 80s, and you'll see a lot of teams on there that are Power 5 teams. I mean, I would rather see them playing.
But Washington, a 1-10 Washington. Woody never.
They'd play Missouri. They'd play some decent teams. And I
remember them playing North Carolina. I remember them playing Texas Christian, Texas Christian. I remember
about the teams you're naming. What have they ever done?
Well, back then, though, when it was the Southwest Conference, the conference was respected. That conference, the way the SEC is now. Now there is no Southwest Conference, but I mean they were at least schools that had standing in the respective conference. And of course that's
what was the price of the Arkansas State ticket, Mark? Do you know?
Yeah, do you have to know?
I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. I know it's not that. What do they call it? Premier pricing, like the week
dynamic pricing.
Yeah, I think in this era, it's. What was the attendance Saturday? Were they sold out?
It was I bet you any money they didn't crack 100,000, but they named it 100,000, 563 or something like that, or. It just touched, but they were up in the upper reaches of the closed end. There were a lot of empty seats. There were some up high in the south end, and the crowd was just not into it. They were not into it. They wanted it to be like 35-0, and they didn't get their wish. And Arkansas State pulled the safeties back, crowded the line, and forced them to dink and dunk a little bit. And Ohio State does not. They have 2 wonderful running backs, but they're not push the pile kind of guys, or they're not like a Beanie Wells kind of guy where you could pack a wallop, or an Ezekiel Elliott where you will knock the linebacker on his face. They're not that kind of guy, and neither is Dalen Hayden, their 3rd string guy. He's about the size of Trevion Henderson. So, and Bruce is right. I mean, the Big Ten is so sorry, from what I've seen, just so sorry that they might play 2 games the rest of the way, Penn State and Michigan, and Penn State's got a ways to go. So, it's still early. Toledo, it'll be a runaway, and that'll bring in whiskey, and that's a night game, and I'm sure they'll be all fired up over that because it's a Big Ten opener.
I'll see you in the buffet line.
Chance to drink all day. Wisconsin is a night game, 7:30, September the 24th.
All right.
They say 7:30. It'll probably be 7:41 or something like that.
Yeah.
Who's counting?
Yeah.
All right, man. Appreciate your time tonight. It's great to have you and have your insight. You do a fantastic job for us. And, the thing that I appreciated the most, that Notre Dame game, I think our lead story, our feature story was the game. What time was that game over? 11 o'clock? 11 o'clock?
I don't know.
Yeah, we were online with the story at 1 o'clock in the morning. Thanks to you. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fun stuff. I mean, it's what we do. It's good.
I want to have you on sometime and tell some Cleet Boyer stories, but not tonight.
Oh, geez, you'd need about an hour.
I know, but nobody tells them better than you.
I could tell you Hop Cassidy stories and Shane Summer stories, and you name it. And a lot of those guys are dead now, so I wouldn't be like stabbed
or sued.
Or they got family. They got family.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
buddy. Z. Thanks, man.
Time.
Yeah, be good.
Take care. There you go. Mark Znider covers the Buckeyes for us and does a great job doing that. And that'll be a route on Saturday night. I'm trying to find the online, the face value of Ohio State football tickets online. You can go on. They now have a thing where you can buy Ohio State football tickets online from Ticketmaster, which are tickets that people have purchased through their season ticket package. And they've placed back for sale online through Ticketmaster. And you can get into this game for like $56-$60. So A, it's a bad seat. And B, they're taking a loss on it. They're just trying to cut their losses on it. But I really think we're in an era. It's not just an Ohio State problem. It's going to be a problem everywhere that they have priced these tickets so high.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to dynamic pricing. And the experience of watching a game, to me, and it's an individual taste thing, to me is so good online at home that I went to every game for 18 years, and so I'm not the typical fan. There are a lot of people who go for the pageantry, the band, all that. I've seen it week after week after week for 2 decades. But I do think, like Mark said, they had empty seats for Arkansas State. That never used to be the case. And if you go online right now and type in Ohio State season football tickets, you can put a deposit down, if you're not an alum, for a 2023 season football ticket, and then they'll have a lottery. So that tells me they're having a bit harder time selling out their season ticket base if they're making it available to the general public.
Well, to your point about pricing the average fan, and I always consider myself an average fan because I just, my daughter took me to a Clippers game this year, and we had great seats in the front row. And I said, "How much these seats cost?" And she said, $40. $40 for a minor league baseball ticket. Now, if I'm going to pay $75 for a ticket to see anything, it's going to be Sinatra, and I want Tony Bennett to open for him. Honestly, I'm looking for a 2-fer or a 3-fer. That's just ridiculous to me to pay that much to watch Ohio State or any athletic team go out and maul somebody by 5 or 6 touchdowns and sit there because it's not entertaining. When it gets to be that much of a bloodbath. And I saw that the other week. I asked somebody at Youngstown the other night, I said, what's it cost to come here and watch Youngstown play? That's Missouri Valley Conference football. And they play some good teams. $20, which is, I think, a fair price to see good competitive college football. Of course, but I understand Ohio State's that's a $600 million machine, to pay for a lot of everything else that gets played there that makes nothing.
Yeah. And, you get in with the ticket that's far from the end of your cash out. Well, it's not cash outlay anymore because they don't take cash. You got your parking, you got your concessions, you got to be in the crowd. I would say fight the crowd, but not everybody views that as fighting the crowd. So great. People go. I mean, I get it. As a much younger man, I was very into going, but I've had my fun with it. And now I think the game on TV on HD with the replays and everything to me is vastly superior to being in the building.
Yeah.
All right. High school football.
Got an interesting email here earlier today that somebody wrote to me and said, can you name 5 teams that are better in area high school over here? And I'll give you the opportunity over there as well. 5 teams that are better than anyone expected, better than I expected when I wrote about them in the preseason. You can think about that, and I will give you that here in a minute if you're interested, because I can't give you 5. I could, but I'm only going to give you 3.
Okay.
And Bruce, if you got 3 teams there that you can qualify as to why they're better than anyone expected, I'll lead off here.
Okay.
If you want to do that right now. And the first one I'm going to talk about, and by the way, Don, I appreciate that. Don from Vandalia, Ohio, wrote in today and said, are there teams, and why do you feel like these teams are better than anyone expected? My number 1 team is Northridge, the Polar Bears. And that may raise some eyebrows because of people who say, well, what about Wayne, or what about Springfield? No, people expected them to be good. Nobody has expected much out of Northridge High School for decades in terms of football. We had Bob Smith on this week on First Person. Been there 39 years, and this is the best start that they've had in decades. They're 4-0. And to qualify why I think they're better, well, first of all, I'm not going to say that they're going to contend for the Division IV state championship. I don't think they're that type of team. But good teams beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and they beat them confidently. And they've done that this year with wins over Dixie, Oakwood, Carlisle, and last week over Miami East. Miami East not a very good team. Dixie's not a very good team. Carlisle and Oakwood have been good teams for a lot of years, and they handled those teams confidently. So that would be one of my choices. And those teams also always have a kid on the field that the other teams honor. They make everybody around them better. And the kid that they have this year, they actually have 4 or 5 really good seniors. But Jeremy Henry is an all-state linebacker down there, and he's also leading the Three Rivers Conference in rushing. He's got nearly 600 yards in rushing. So he's the guy that's the leader on the field, Jeremy Henry, number 15. And Northridge would be my number 1 pick. You want me to go over my other 2, or do you want to jump in with one from OCC?
Yeah, one from the OCC is easy. I mean, New Albany is the best team, at least according to the OHSAA state football rankings right now. And New Albany, I mean, I give you the reasons. They had a new coach, Brian Finn, new coach, taking over for Bubba Kidwell. New Albany was fantastic last year, undefeated, made a deep playoff run. They had 3,000-yard rushers last year. They lost 2 of them. They got Christian Manville back, and they have plugged their holes. And, I mean, they showed us on week 1 the dominant road win at Marysville, and they have not been anybody threatened them since, and they're not going to be threatened this week, I would not imagine. They're playing at Olentangy Liberty. Liberty's better than its record. They're 1-3, but I think New Albany's going to win that game. So that would be the number 1 team here in Central Ohio that's jumped out at me.
My second team would be the New Bremen Cardinals. I thought they were going to be good. I thought they were going to be a playoff team. I thought they'd be 7-3, 8-2 at the beginning of the year over the summer. And again, they have beaten the teams, and their wins haven't been impressive up until last week. In fact, I picked Versailles to win that game, and I think I wrote in my picks page, I like Versailles 3-0 better and respect it more than New Bremen's 3-0. But again, they've got that one player, we mentioned him earlier, David Holman, who everybody honors around him. They want to play up to his level and up to his standard, and he makes everybody better around there. Coach Chris Schmidt said that the other night. And, he went out the other night, accounted for 150 yards of the 270 total yards they had as a team, pretty much even. I think he had 84 yards rushing and 70 yards passing, something like that. But there's a team at 4-0 that is better. And they're going to get matched this week because they're on the road at Marion Local. And that's, I'm not going to say that they're going to go in and do what they did 2 years ago when they blocked the punt and recovered in the end zone for a touchdown to win that game and flip their season and everything like that. It's a little early to talk about that. But they're going to be competitive. They're going to be competitive on Friday night, and Marion Local knows that.
Yeah, totally agree with both those picks. In Central Ohio, my number 2 team would be Hilliard Bradley. The Jaguars have already won as many games this year as they won all of last year. They were 3-10 a year ago. Mike Laparo has done a really good job with Bradley. They will be in our Press Pros Magazine Central Ohio Spotlight this week as they're playing host to 4-0 Jerome. So 4-0 Jerome at 3-1 Bradley this week. Bradley returned Trevor Schuler, who's kind of a pinball, bowling ball type running back. A lot of people who watch our site might remember the picture of Trevor Schuler last year at Upper Arlington. A great shot by Brian Bayless. Trevor Schuler completely inverted, head on the bottom, feet on the top. He got upended by Upper Arlington's defense, and they have their quarterback, Braden Fleehardy, back. He was a transfer in last year. He's obviously much more comfortable in year 2 of the offense. He's spreading the football around. Bradley lost Friday night at Marysville, but they lost by a competitive score, 43-29. So I'm anxious to see Bradley and see if they are as good as their start would suggest that they are.
Well, my number 3 team, and there might be some people out there waiting for me to say Coldwater, because Coldwater's had such big graduation losses over the last 3 and 4 years. They just keep graduating 18, 19, 20 kids. But I don't think anybody anymore, with the success they've had, expects anything less than a deep tournament run out of Coldwater, regardless of how many people they lose. But my number 3 team is the Tip City Red Devils. And the reason I say that is because they lost 19 starters last year on both sides of the ball, 19 of their 22 kids. And when you lose that many kids, I expected them to be 4-6, 5-5. If they get a break, 6-4 this year. And 6-4 because they are excellently coached by Matt and Charlie Burbacher and their staff down there. But they have come out and they have beaten the teams they should beat confidently, starting with Bellbrook. Bellbrook on opening night is a very tough win, especially when they've beaten you a couple of years in a row the way they had. And they beat them. They took care of them. They've got a good matchup this week with Stebbins. I know that you question Stebbins, but I think Stebbins is one of those teams that can make life miserable for you on a given night because they've got athletes. But this is a big week for them, because after this, then they've got Xenia, and they've got Piqua, and they've got Troy back to back to back. So this week 5 is a big, big game for them against Stebbins. And if they get through this, that sets them up pretty confidently to play the big 3, the other big 3 that they've got coming up on their schedule. But they have played Sydney. They played well against them, and they played against Bellbrook. They know what a quality win feels like already. And I'm very impressed with the job that Matt and his 19 replacements. If you want to know who their leader on the field is, it's their quarterback. It's Liam Peronsky. And Matt's even said in a preseason interview, if something happened to me, I'd feel pretty good about turning the team over to Liam Peronsky, because he knows where all the bodies are out there. He can go out and tell you how to win a game and go out and show you and actually do it. So Liam Peronsky and the Tip City Red Devils is my 3rd team.
Well, I am shocked you did not mention the Coldwater Cavaliers, because you gave.
I did mention them.
Oh, you said New Bremen.
Yes.
And your first team was who? Was it Coldwater?
No. My first team was Northridge, New Bremen, and Tip City. But I said Coldwater, I'm not going to pick them as a team of lesser expectation, because the expectation is so off the charts for them every year because of their record of consistency. People expect them to be good regardless of who graduates.
Yeah, they're better than I thought they'd be. Marcel Blasingame is a lot better than I thought he would be as a quarterback, and he's phenomenal as a quarterback.
But they didn't lose 19 starters on both sides of the ball.
Point taken. All right. So my 3rd team in Central Ohio is Upper Arlington. You say, wait, Upper Arlington lost 2 weeks ago to Pick North. They did. And they had no business being in that game. They were dominated by Pick North, but they were ahead until Pick North pulled out a length of the field drive at the very end, which reminded me a lot of Upper Arlington's only loss last season in the regional finals or maybe regional semifinals, to St. Edward. UA was outsized, out-talented, honestly, and found a way via a kick return in that game by Sam Cannon to throw a big-time scare into the eventual Division I state champion. It was the toughest playoff game that St. Edward had, came from Upper Arlington, and they lost a ton to graduation, and nobody expected Upper Arlington to be anything this year. And Justin Buttermore has figured out a way by building a program, kids who are ready to step in and play, for UA to be off to a 3-1 start, and they'll get to 4-1 this week. They've got another game they're going to win this week. And they've just got a program at Upper Arlington. So that's a tribute to Justin Buttermore, and it's a tribute to the kids in his program. And they had a their game against Pick North, they had their youth football night, and they have something like 300 kids in flag football on up through junior high school and 80 coaches. And that is a very big, and as most people know, very affluent suburb. And the people in that suburb love the Golden Bears, and they really support Golden Bear football. And I think Upper Arlington is eventually, under Justin Buttermore, going to win a Division I state championship because he's got a true program. And that's what you see with Tim Goodwin at Marion Local. That's what you see with Chip Otten at Coldwater. That's what you see with good teams is they may lose a lot of guys, but, man, they've got a program, and they build from the bottom up.
Our chief antagonist, Jeremy, wrote in this week and said, do you think you were quick to jump on the Piqua bandwagon the way you have been? It kind of sounded like you're a homer for the Indians.
Let me take that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jeremy, how could you not be on the Piqua bandwagon? They beat everybody 50+ to nothing. Like, I know people were like, oh, you guys really overestimated Piqua. Well, if you look at a team that's won 3 games by 50+ points and hasn't given up a point. And by the way, the last one was 59-0 over Troy, which had played Xenia, and Xenia had allowed Troy to score 3 touchdowns. Then I don't think we overhype Piqua. I think Xenia's really good, and I don't know how they went into Troy Memorial Stadium and only won by 30. And I don't have any clue how Troy bounced back from losing to Piqua and beat Stebbins, which was undefeated. So I think what we know is the MVL is hard to pick, but it looks like Xenia is the class of the MVL at this point in time. They got 2 dynamic players, Trayshawn Saunders, their running back, and I apologize, I don't know their wide receiver, but the week before they played Piqua, those 2 kids had 5 touches and scored 5 touchdowns. So they've got 2 really dynamic players. When you have one at the running back position and one at the wide receiver position, that gives you what? Balance, and it makes you what? Unpredictable. And so teams that have to battle Xenia are going to have their hands full.
Well, and Jeremy, I back up what Bruce just said, and I'll add this. 159-0, Piqua went into that game as far as points scored as opposed to points against. But 159-0 over Belmont, not good. West Carrollton, really not good this year. Troy, struggling, rebuilding under a first-year coach. And, you can only, as to what Bruce said, you can only go with what you see. They scored 159. They didn't give up anyone. And granted, they didn't play the NFC East in getting to that point. But you could say the same thing about Xenia as well. Mm-hmm. They beat Beaver Creek. Not good. Fairborn. So both of those kind of teams went in with that certain unknown something or other that you just were waiting for the other shoe to fall, and it fell on the Indians. Now, their quarterback gets knocked out early in the game. He did come back, but he wasn't the same guy, after the injury. The shock value, they had to play against that. They were down 21-0 at halftime. To their credit, they only gave up 7 points in the second half for a 28-0 shutout. So, do we jump on the bandwagon? Are we homering with the Piqua Indians? I don't think so. But again, it's high school. It's not college. It's not the NFL. You can only go by what you see, and you got to play the teams that are on your schedule and are in your league. So it is what it is.
I remember looking at that matchup, Xenia and Piqua, and they were both so dominant, and neither one of them had beaten a team that had beaten another team that wasn't winless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they played some teams that had a win, but the teams that they got that win against were winless teams. Mm-hmm. So they hadn't beaten a team that had a good win, is basically what I'm saying. So that's what made that game hard to pick.
Now, Marion Local is now the team with the big point differential. Now, I think they're 151-4 and 7 points against. I mentioned that earlier in the show about Wapakoneta. They can't wait to be challenged. And they played Macomb, good team. In week 2, played Wapakoneta to start the season. Minster in week 3, a rebuilding team in the MAC. Delphi St. John's, they've played, not particularly strong right now. They can't wait to play the teams, the Coldwaters, and the teams that are going to prepare them for that gauntlet that Bruce alluded to early when you talk about Cary and you talk about Versailles, and you talk about all those great teams now in Division VI stacked up the way it is. Tim Goodwin really wants to know, and he wants his kids to have that kind of experience. He doesn't want to win 52-0 every week. He wants to win some of those 14-7s and 21-17s and games like that you're going to have to win later on in the year.
Yeah, and conversely, I mean, just to illustrate what Sonny's talking about, Wapak is 3-1.
Yes.
And Macomb is 3-1.
Yes.
So
yes.
Marion Local is the only team to beat either one of them. So that tells you that Marion Local.
Let me say this about Macomb. They went to Macomb last year on the road and won 10-0. 10-0. Mm-hmm. The same team comes down here this year. Marion beats them 42-0. Yeah. That's the kind of Marion this year, and as opposed to last year. And last year, of course, they won the state title and graduated a dozen or 14 or something like that seniors off that team. So it speaks to the way they manage the kids coming up. How do they always have the ready plug-ins? Because they play a lot of freshmen, sophomores, and juniors along the way to have those kids in a place prepared to take over for the seniors when they graduate.
Yeah, yeah. And that comes from a lot of their big margins. They don't run it up on people. They get their young guys in. They get them depth. They get them experience. And then if they have an injury, and they had some serious injuries last year, they're able to put guys in and continue rolling.
By the way, appreciate the letters. Always feel free to write to PressProsMagazine.com. We get tons and tons and tons of letters. Sometimes we get more than we actually can read and respond to, but we always enjoy them. You don't have to agree with what we say or write, and a lot of you don't, and that makes it even more fun. So we appreciate always hearing from you.
Yeah, just an earlier note, we do have a change in the Wisconsin game time. Ohio State, Wisconsin will play in 2 weeks. They'll play at 7:30. Ohio State's game this week against Toledo is a 7 o'clock kickoff. We're still putting together our schedule for the weekend, but I think it's pretty obvious. We are definitely going to be covering New Bremen at Marion Local, and then in Central Ohio, we're definitely going to be covering Jerome against Hilliard Bradley. But we'll have a lowdown edition later on in the week where we'll be sharing with you the games that we cover. And we want to remind you that PressProsMagazine.com is not the only site to check to find out what we're doing for the latest videos and for our little daily updates. The lowdown videos are also posted on our Instagram site, which you can find that on Instagram at PressProsMagazine. Keep an eye on our Facebook page as well, and reach out to us. You can leave a comment on Instagram. You can leave a comment on Twitter. You can leave a comment on Facebook. Our Twitter site is at PressProsMag, as we're building out our social channels in hopes of having more avenues to interact with you and to hear what you have to say about our coverage and about teams that we should be taking a look at. And we can't have our eyes everywhere. We do not purport to be or endeavor to be a newspaper that covers every sport. We are a feature site. We cover the things that we think will attract the most readership. And so if you ever wonder why you're covering who we're covering, that's the reason, because we're covering what we think will get us the most eyeballs. And our track record of that is pretty good, but that's due to you for your loyalty in reading the site.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, I say thumbs up on the Skynet internet because you didn't drop out tonight.
I've got so much bandwidth here, it's making a humming noise in the background. So this is like running with a Cummins diesel instead of a 327 Chevy.
Well, Skynet is a whole lot more reliable than the Bengals backup snapper. I think we can say that.
Oh my, what a mess that was.
Yeah, but let me just say about that. The blocked extra point, go back and watch the video. And I was surprised because I really like Charles Davis, the analyst on TV. But Charles Davis missed that analysis. That was not the fault of the snap. That was the fault of the blocker on the end of the line who went for the wide guy and let Minkah Fitzpatrick come inside him untouched with a tighter angle to block the PAT.
That's high school. That's high school coaching right there. I have heard high school coaches say that a million times. You always take the guy with the shortest route to the kicker.
Take that guy inside. You got to get a hand on that guy inside and just chip that guy outside. He went full on the guy outside. He went full on the guy outside, and Fitzpatrick came around, and he was wide open to block that. Yeah, so that was not on the snapper.
Sure was.
All right. So thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you guys, all your comments and everything that you say and do. And Brian, before we get out of here tonight, thank you very much for your comment about Milton Union. We did not have Milton on our list of surprise teams because if you've been watching us all year, you know that we have touted.
That's not a surprise.
No, we touted Milton Union. We expected Milton Union to be really good, and they are indeed very good. So thank you very much.
Brian, thank you once again for that great rendering of Jack Elam that you did so many years ago. Only you and I know what we're talking about, but I laugh about it every day.
Very good. All right, everybody have a great night. Encourage your friends to watch the replay if they missed this live, and we will see you out and about at the games you care about. Have a great evening.